Hey everyone, host of Shelves, Jeremy Meyer here. If you like the podcast, I thought I'd recommend a couple others for you. If you want to hear more about unproduced scripts, check out Screenplay Archaeology. If you want to hear some other movie or entertainment-related discussion, check out the Entertainment Buffet podcast. If you're interested in some video game discussion, check out my friends over at the Darkcast and darkstation.com. Also be sure to visit some of our friends of the show, the Nerds and Marks podcast and 616 Entertainment. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second consecutive episode, and God knows how long. Welcome to the Shelf Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. Hopefully it sounds a little better. I got a bit of a pop filter on here, a microphone sock, so hopefully can avoid any pops and noises of that such. So last week, and then continuing with the October spirit, we talked about Resident Evil, the 2002 movie written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Today we're going to continue that trend and discuss Resident Evil Extinction, which was the third Resident Evil movie. I couldn't find a script for the second one, but the second one is kind of the most uninteresting movie of the bunch, although I kind of enjoy it because it's the only one that even attempts to follow one of the video games. It's kind of a adaptation of Resident Evil 2 and 3, but, mixed with the new characters from the movie. So unfortunately, I don't have a script for 2, so we're going to skip over 2 and head on to 3, Resident Evil Extinction. And as I said on last week's episode, I actually pretty much enjoy the first 4 of these movies. They're all kind of different degrees of bad. They're video game movies, so you get what you expect out of them. But Resident Evil Extinction, I think, is one of the better of the 3. It might actually be the best of the original 3. It was the first movie where they kind of took the R-rated gore stuff a little more seriously. Like most of the zombie biting action in the first 2 movies, it's just there's little teeth marks on people, and there's not a lot of violence. This is the first one where we actually see zombies biting off chunks of people, and the gore is kind of a little more realistic, and it is still mostly an action movie, but it is one that balances the action and horror a little better than the rest of the franchise, especially coming off of 2. 2 is a straight up just action movie. There's no elements of horror in it at all. It's completely lost. But yeah, this one, still written by Paul W.S. Anderson. He wrote all of the movies. This one, though, is directed by somebody else. The second one was also directed by a different person. But this one is directed by Russell Mulcahy? See if his Wikipedia has a pronunciation. It does not. Mulcahy. Mulcahy. Russell Mulcahy. He's Australian. Let's see what else he's directed here. Looks like he's actually an actor in a lot of stuff. His Wikipedia is not saying if he... Okay, director. Did he direct Highlander? Okay, so he directed the first Highlander movie, Highlander 2, which from my understanding is a really bad movie. I've never seen the second one. Resident Evil Extinction, 2007. The Scorpion King 2, Rise of a Warrior, straight to DVD in 2008. And in 2018, he did In Like Flynn, which is a biographical film about the actor Errol Flynn, or Errol Flynn, however you say it. Yeah, so, he's done some stuff, but this is the only thing of his I've seen besides Highlander. So yeah, Resident Evil Extinction, it gets us to the point that the first script for the first movie ends on, which is like the world has been taken over by this virus, which I feel like is what he was always trying to get to, even though it makes no sense. It's like a thinly veiled explanation from the first movie. You know, every movie kind of starts with the "My name is Alice" bit. Although it'd be interesting to note that none of those so far have been in the scripts. I mean, I say so far, but this is the only sequel script I've covered so far. But I guess a little spoiler. On Halloween, I am dropping another Resident Evil episode for Resident Evil Afterlife, which is the fourth film. And I'm actually going to be recording that right after this. In that one, it also does not start with the "My name is Alice." But if you watch all of the Resident Evil movies, you'll notice that every movie starts with a "My name is Alice" recap of here's what's been going on in the franchise, and every movie ends with some pullback to some reveal for the sequel, except for the last one. So, in Resident Evil Extinction, we have, I'm going to assume you've seen the movie Resident Evil Extinction and Resident Evil Afterlife. These episodes, the scripts are not terribly different from the movies, but they are different in some important ways. So I will just say right here, if you haven't seen the movie, if you're not familiar with the movie, I would highly recommend watching both of those before these episodes. I'm going to do my best to describe the plot, but I only have my notes sitting in front of me. I haven't watched these movies in a while. I wanted to watch them before I recorded this, but just didn't have time. Also, these might end up being a little shorter episodes. So, and I do have a bonus to attach probably to the next episode. Another Resident Evil 1 script, but not for the movie, but just it was like a outline that came out a long time ago, so it's just like a little paragraph to read and discuss. So I'm going to tack that onto the next episode, because I think the next episode might actually be a little shorter than this one, just because of the nature of that script versus that movie. Okay, so we have the same opening to this script that we do of the movie, which is the kind of the repeat scene of the first movie. It's one of those things where you turn it on and you're like, am I watching the first movie again? But then there's a change, and there's a scene where she goes through a door, and instead of leading to a room that the door leads to in the movie, it leads to the laser room from the first movie, where they're like, the guy gets cubed by the lasers. So, fans of the series will know exactly what's going on. So, she walks in, she's dodging the lasers, manages to jump up into a vent above her. And, she's crawling through the vent, and then that ends up with her in, like, the hospital from the end of 2. And as she's running down the hallway, there's some traps, and then one of the traps jumps up and kills her. And it's like, oh, shit, our main character was just killed. But alas, it's just a clone. There's that scene where they take her out and dump her in the ditch, and there's just like all the bodies of all the clones. And this is the one that starts getting into some weird bullshit, cloning and all that kind of stuff. The series does not take itself too seriously, and it kind of goes off the rails and completely loses what Resident Evil was. They were kind of just doing their own thing. Okay. The beginning after this is a little different from the movie. So in the movie, we get the scene of we get introduced to Alice. I believe this is where the "My name is Alice" scene kind of takes place. She's on her motorcycle cruising through the desert wasteland. It's implied that the T virus, has taken over the world, and the world has turned into a desert wasteland, and yada yada. They're on the West Coast, and because this takes place in and around Vegas. So in the movie, she comes to like a TV station or a radio station or something, and there's these like cannibal people there, and they capture her and they throw her in the pit to fight the dogs. That doesn't happen in the script. Instead, she has a little dog with her, which is kind of very Mad Max-esque. I believe it's Mad Max 2, Road Warrior, where they introduce he has a dog in that one. And this movie obviously drawing really heavily from Mad Max. You watch the film and you see like all the vehicles are kind of decked out like apocalyptic vehicles straight out of Mad Max Road Warrior. So there's a lot of inspiration from that. And Yeah, so in the script she has a dog, and the dog is barely mentioned in the script. Like when they introduce him, I thought it was like, oh, there's gonna be a moment where he saves her, blah blah blah. Honestly, the dog gets cut probably for good reason, because clearly the dog's not in the movie. Because he never contributes anything. Like he kind of has something in this opening scene, and then it's usually just reference like, oh yeah, and the dog is there too. So the dog gets cut, but in the scene, it's her just exploring the TV station. The dog runs into some zombie dogs, and then kind of runs away back to Alice. I believe she takes care of them, and then they move on. Like it's almost kind of a pointless scene. There's no crazy people, just the three dogs, and Alice has her own dog. So, actually, according to my notes, I am wrong. This totally does have my name is Alice. Wow, so I'm just a big fat fucking liar. It just comes a little later in the movie, because I believe in the actual movie it's like right after the opening scene with the clone, and then we get the my name is Alice moment. So this, it actually, in my notes, says it goes a little more in depth, and we actually see what happens around the world with Umbrella. I actually remember this now, because there's one scene where it's like, it's always like in the film, it's her face and like TV screens as they're like spinning around and showing stuff. They show like umbrellas on trial, and Dr. Isaacs, the main bad guy played by Ian Glenn, of them like sneaking out of the trial as zombies attack the trial, which all the logistics of all that just sounds ridiculous. So you're telling me zombies are already like a worldwide threat, and they're stopping to have a trial with these guys? Like, I don't know. Like, they always make it seem like it happened so quickly that there was just no way to deal with it. But they're having a trial and the zombies break in. So after the scene, we cut to the armored convoy, and this is the biggest differentiation from the actual movie and the script. Is in the movie is where we get introduced to Claire Redfield for the first time, who is played by Ali Larter. In this version, it is Jill Valentine from the second movie. I believe they tried to get the actress back. I believe it's Sienna Gullery or whatever her name is. They tried to get the actress back, and she could not do it. She did end up coming back for the post-credit scene in 4 and 5, but she was not in this one. Yeah, Sienna Gilroy. I don't know how to say her last name. Everybody's got all these names I can't say. But yeah, she comes back for another ones, but she missed the third one. So it was originally supposed to be her. She does not come back, but it does have Carlos from the second movie, played by O'Day Fair. LJ, played by Mike Epps, comes back from the second one. So, it was supposed to be the whole cast and crew from the second one rolling around together, but instead we get introduced to Claire Redfield, who will also come back for the fourth movie, which I like. I like the addition of Ali Larter as Claire Redfield. I think she was a good choice to play her, and she is good in these movies. So we get introduced to their convoy. In this convoy it's Jill instead of Claire. One thing that the script pointed out to me is that I never noticed that the makeup of the convoy was actually important, because you got the school bus for transporting kids, you got an ambulance, you got the big gas tanker. In the script they talk about how the convoy always stays mobile, and there's even a scene where they like try to gas up a car as they're moving, which I'm pretty sure is extremely dangerous, and it seems a little ridiculous to me, the idea that like y'all can't just stop for a minute or two, like you're always moving. Like, it makes a little no sense to me. That part's not really addressed in the movie, but so there's this little scene where as the convoy's going, and there's this running bit about Jill trying to find cigarettes, which that actually gets passed on to Claire and Carlos in the movie, because we'll get into it later, but in ending scene, some characters are swapped around. So yeah, they always stay immobile. They gas up their Hummer while they're moving around, and a zombie horde gets in the way. It kind of seems like it's going to lead into an action scene, like, they're going to run over zombies and people are going to be falling off, because what happens is like Jill gets out and is like crawling on vehicles trying to get the gas hose to the Hummer and stuff. So, they never stop moving. But yeah, they get to a horde and they're kind of bumping off the vehicles, and I thought there was going to be like the danger scene, like, oh, she's hanging on, she can barely get, but nothing like that happens. Personally, I probably would have done that just to kind of ramp up the danger in the beginning of the movie, but instead in the actual movie there's just like one scene where there's like a zombie chewing a dude on the road, and then like the convoy runs him over. There's the one scene in the opening while they're playing Inagata Devita, which is a great introduction. But okay, so then we cut to the underground laboratory, as Umbrella always has, with our introduction to Ian Glenn, our villain. Dr. Isaacs is his character name, who is one of the better villains of the franchise. And the whole outline of this movie is the whole domestication aspect. It's, this world is taken over by these creatures, and we have to find a way to cure them and domesticate them. And that was the whole point of the clones is, Alice is the only one who's ever bonded with the T virus, and she's changed, which is something we're going to get into in a minute here. They kind of allude to it at the end of the second film, but the third one is where they really started to get into it. And it does have some basis in the games, but not entirely the way it's portrayed in the movie. Like, if you were not a hardcore fan of the video games, like, I feel like even casual fans, this would just, like, a lot of this would just go over their head, which is one of my main problems with these Resident Evil movies and Paul W.S. Anderson in general. I will talk more about this in the next script, because the fourth one, it has a lot more relevancy in the way it's written. But there's a recurring line in that script that perfectly outlines my issue with the way these movies were handled. And as I said in the first episode, I like these movies for what they are, which is to say not very good movies. But, I guess you could say I like them for the wrong reasons type thing. It's like enjoyable trash to me. But some of them do have more merit than the other, and I do believe the third movie is kind of on the better end of things. So where were we? Okay, so the convoy. Okay, yeah, so one thing, so, we go to the underground, and it's all the talk about, we need to domesticate the zombies, and, they never refer to them as zombies, but it's all about domestication. Dr. Isaacs wants to find the original Alice, and the one in charge of Umbrella wants them to just like keep using clones and see what happens. The difference being, in the script, the head of Umbrella is somebody called Akamoto, and in the movie it was Albert Wesker, who was from the video games. It was a main character. Played by, who was it? I always get him mixed up, because he was played by one person in this movie, and then he went on to be played by somebody else in the next two movies. Jason O'Mara is Wesker in this one. He went on to be in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he was in Vegas, which is a show that I don't know if anybody remembers. But yeah, he's just kind of like stood in. You barely see him in this movie. He's in a couple scenes. But Dr. Isaacs is the main villain. So yeah, he wants to keep using the clones, and Dr. Isaacs is furious because he wants to try to find Alice, but he can't get the permission to do it. From this point, the movie kind of proceeds a little bit as normal. Alice finds the journal that talks about Arcadia, which is, some promised land where there's no infection in Alaska. And the convoy, they set up camp. Carlos is rolling around on an SUV, planting cameras. They got a radio guy putting out a signal to find survivors. They do show that Alice is picking up the signal but ignoring it. She just kind of wants to be out on her own. Again, but it's I might get confused. I might say Claire's camp a couple times, but just know if I say Claire, I mean Jill, because it's Claire in the movie, Jill in the script. But Yeah, so Alice, she sets up her own camp. She's got this little journal and she's reading about it. Only this time, we get an elaborate dream sequence. So if you remember, at the end of Resident Evil Apocalypse, she's captured. They have her like in suspension, and they're testing on her. This is where the Project Alice thing comes in. It's also the first time we're actually introduced to Ian Glenn as Dr. Isaacs. And she escapes the laboratory, and they kind of reveal her telekinetic powers there. I think she blows up some dude's head or something. And then she escapes with all the characters from the second movie, including the little girl. So this time we actually get a cutscene of what happened immediately after that. And, they bring... It's kind of ridiculous because it doesn't really make sense. They bring her to a anti-Umbrella, like, guerrilla resistance group, which seems a little ridiculous, but because of the experimentation on her, Umbrella is able to track her. They kill Angie, who's the little girl from Resident Evil Apocalypse, who's basically like the reason the T-virus was created in this movie universe. So yeah, it's kind of explains why Alice wants to be on her own, and in a way it helps with her character development, because in the actual film, it's just like bad things happen when I'm around people, but it's never really addressed. Like literally the end of Resident Evil 2 is just kind of left hanging. It's like, oh, well, if they did this stuff to her and they can kind of see through her eyes and something's going on with her, why didn't they do anything with it? And then like in the middle of this movie, it's like, oh, we can't, utilize her abilities unless we have a direct connection with her to one of our satellites, but we can't find her. It's revealed she like broke into an Umbrella facility and got their satellite data, and it keeps the information on a watch, so she has a time that she needs to be like stepped out of the open and like hiding somewhere, which is something that did happen in one of the earlier scenes. Like when she stops and finds the journal, she checks the time and she like hides the bike with a camouflage tarp, and we see the whole satellite tracking her from space. We also get introduced to the White Queen in the laboratory. Dr. Isaacs is talking to her, which she is in the movie. She does appear at the end. It's been a little while since I've seen the movie. I think she does kind of pop up in the beginning or somewhere in the middle. I do believe there's a couple nods to the White Queen, which again was something that was in the script for the first movie that didn't actually make it into the first movie that then shows up here. It's all that Alice in Wonderland shit. I should point out one scene that is not in the script is in the beginning. The convoy stops at a little hotel, and that's where LJ gets bit, and he doesn't tell the group. That scene never happens. LJ actually makes it to the end of the movie in this, which is a very interesting choice, especially coming off the second one. I think Paul Anderson liked Mike Epps, and apparently the decision was changed at some point to have him get killed, but some of that stuff gets passed off to other characters here. But there is no scene where they stop at the hotel. Instead, they set up camp at this, basically it's like a tourist attraction that has like a movie theater, like a drive-through, or a drive-in, I mean. And, Jill is looking for cigarettes, and she can't find them. And, while this is going on, we see Alice dreaming about what happened in Detroit, and then her telekinesis is kind of like levitating all the stuff around her as she's sleeping, and then when she wakes up, it all falls and her bike gets destroyed. That just like in the movie, but her dream just doesn't go into as much detail in the film. So we get Dr. Isaacs. He's capturing zombies, bringing them in, injecting them with the serum, trying to domesticate them, which, just like it is in the movie, except in the film, they put them in like gray jumpsuits and every zombie kind of looks the same. They all mutate and kind of have like bulbous heads and stuff, which is specifically a nod to the Crimson Heads, which was from the remake of Resident Evil 1. If you like killed a zombie and left them there and didn't burn their bodies, because they added in that mechanic in that game, and you would come back to that room, the zombies would be alive again, like, and like full of blood and all like pumping like crazy, and they'd be super fast. And it was, a little different. And this version, it's like, oh no, they're like testing the antidote on them, and it's just making them stronger, more aggressive, and faster. But yeah, so we see Dr. Isaac's capturing a zombie. They specifically call out he's wearing Raiders gear, which I think is funny because I'm probably going to forget about this when I cover Resident Evil Afterlife, so I'll just say it now. In Afterlife, there is also a reference to a zombie in Raiders gear. It clearly didn't make it into the movie, and I just have this funny little idea in my head that I was like, man, I really want to get a zombie in this movie wearing Raiders gear for some reason. But, yeah, but that doesn't happen. See, crowd eating. Oh, okay, so I wrote autocorrect fucked with my notes here. It says crowd instead of crow. I got a little confused. So, Alice, she doesn't have her bike anymore, but she finds a truck, and we see the scene of a crow eating the flesh of a zombie, or a dead zombie, which will come up later. So instead of LJ getting bit, it's this guy Sven, but that comes in a whole scene that is a new scene. I'm just trying to make sure because some of this seems a little out of order here. So when they're checking out this campsite, the building at the campsite, one of their guys, Sven, gets bit, and a scene similar to LJ at the motel, but it's at this tourist attraction. So he gets like chained up in the ambulance, and the scene kind of goes on for a little bit. They've also are like siphoning gas out of a truck. But what happens is like, so they had this tourist attraction has this whole like drive-in setup, which I don't know how it has power. It's never described, but they have a movie playing on the drive-in. I think it's like Scarface or something. It's, I didn't take a note of what movie they're watching, but I think it is relevant because it's like gunshots are hidden by the movie. But yeah, so they're watching a movie and they're like siphoning gas from another giant gas truck. And what happens is zombies just start popping up out of the sand. And it's revealed later that there's actually like a cemetery at this tourist attraction. There was like something in the gift shop that they missed. It's like, oh, it also has a cemetery. So the zombies start coming out of the sand and they start attacking, beginning with the person. It's like a girl in a Hello Kitty shirt, they say, who's siphoning the gas. She gets attacked first, and her gun like sprays the gas tanker and like starts leaking it. And nobody hears it because of the movie. But so we get, this is actually when the crow scene happens in the movie, but instead it happens at night and it's zombies popping out of the sand. So it kind of turns into, mass pandemonium at the movie theater, at the drive-in. And that's when Alice shows up. They have the flamethrower. The scene's pretty similar to what actually happens in the movie, but instead of, her burning the crows, she's burning the zombies. And then we also get the scene because of the leaking tanker, the gas on the ground catches on fire, so she has to race away the tanker and hop out as it blows up. We get this fun little action scene. So now Alice has kind of come to meet the group. She meets up with the group. She meets Carlos, which, there's a little hint of a relationship there as there is in the movie. She gets reacquainted with Jill, who holds everything against her of Detroit and, everything that happened there. So she's kind of got this like stone cold bitch personality going on towards Alice. And, Alice tells them about, what happened. A lot of people in the group kind of like refer to her as a legend from all these stories, which is like, there's nothing about her that's like legendary, and except for the fact that it's like, oh, she kind of dealt with Umbrella twice. Like, I don't know. None of it makes sense for her to be like, oh my God, you're this like living legend and blah, blah, blah. And, because this is the movie that introduces Kmart, which they try to make such a important character, but that to me just never really struck. Played by Spencer Locke, I think her name is. Because she doesn't really do much in this movie. She's in the the next movie also has a thing of like, oh, we really need to find her, but never felt like she was as important as the movies made her out to be. Other than it's just like, oh, you know, she's young, like we gotta protect her. But yeah, you know, she's regarded as a legend, and also the last time she saw any of them is when a bunch of them died. So it's a little conflicting. That relationship just doesn't land for me. But while this is going on, you know, she's not really paying attention by the time, and Alice is detected by Umbrella because of their satellites. Her watch isn't working is the whole thing because of all the action. You know, her watch got damaged. So, you know, Dr. Isaacs goes to talk to Akamoto, which, you know, in the movie it's Wesker. And, you know, they won't approve him going after her. But what he's been doing, they mention it in the last scene, and they do it again in this one, is he's been recording his voice. And I believe this actually happens in the movie, too, with Wesker's voice. But he kind of cuts together his own message of, you know, getting the approval so he can just go out and do it. So Alice tells them about the journal, about Alaska, Arcadia. And them, you know, they take a vote with the group on if they're going to go there. But first they have to get some gas because, you know, they lost a gas truck and they have to get something figured out. I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah, so they decide on going to Vegas to get some gas. You know, it's risky, it's a city, but it's the place where they'll get the most gas. One thing that's kind of a running trend with these scripts that I've noticed is like some character moments cut out. Like there's a good character moment between Alice and Carlos. You know, kind of just talking about like, you know, maybe humans deserve this, and you know, maybe they're the dinosaurs, and you know, all that stuff just always gets cut out. It seems to be. But yeah, it comes more in the next one, but there's some egregious character moments. It's like, you should have left this in there because, like, I assume these movies are on a strict time limit of like, no, it has to be under 2 hours. Like, we can't have these long Resident Evil movies because who cares that much? It's just like, we got to get in and out. So then, you know, we go to the scene where they go to Vegas, and in the movie, it's just like they roll up on the strip and like bits of casinos are sticking out of the sand. Like, I as somebody who was recently just in Las Vegas, it's incredibly unrealistic. There's literally just like a couple buildings sticking out of the sand, and that's it. And then like specific landmarks, like they have the Eiffel Tower to Paris, and I want to say the Sphinx at the Luxor or whatever. But I was literally just in Vegas at the beginning of October, and I was thinking about that movie as we were there, and kind of just looking at the landscape of, yeah, you would need sand like 10 stories high, and like some of the, like, none of this matches up landmark wise. And in the movie they say they're going to dig in the sand to get to the gas at the bottom of one of the casinos, and that wouldn't be happening. Like, it's just none of this matches up. But instead, in the script, it's a little different. They actually have them driving through Vegas, like side streets, and like they come to like a neighborhood area, and this is where the crow attack happens. So, you know, the crows came through Vegas and basically ate the zombies, is what's implied, and then, you know, they got mutated. So the crow scene with the bus happens, and like all the people in the bus get killed except for the kids that they managed to get out into one of the other vehicles. And the whole time Dr. Isaacs is watching them on the satellite, which is like so stupid because the whole thing with Wesker is like, oh, they found Alice, but he just like hacks his voice and authorizes it himself. And I need to go and check this in the movie and see if there's some sort of correlation here, if it's still kind of similar. But it's like, why bother going through all that trouble if you're just going to be watching her on the satellite like right afterwards? Like, why couldn't you just show like, hey, we got her, she's right here, like let's go get her, this is what you wanted, you literally said until like we were 100% true. So let's go. So yeah, the crow attack kind of just ends and they move on after the bus driver Otto dies, which is the same character from in the movie. It's Otto. So, they get to Vegas, and it's a really kind of anticlimactic scene. They get there. They're getting gas from the Venetian, which was a hotel I was just in, and was lovely. That was actually our favorite hotel in Vegas. LJ wanders into the casino, and it's really set up like, oh, he's gonna wander in and get killed, but he just like takes some casino chips and is just like, yeah, I lost some money here back in the day, and I'm just getting it back or whatever. And it's like the principle of the thing. They get their gas, they leave the strip, and it's like, this should be the big moment. It's like, oh, you're on the Vegas Strip, something should be happening, and they kind of build it up to nothing. Like, even reading in the script, it's like, oh, maybe there's going to be a attack inside the casino, but that actually never comes. They leave the strip, and then that's when the zombie attack happens from the film, which is, happens on a side street, which is they find the container just like in the middle of the street, and they need to get around it, but then the zombies come out, the like upgraded zombies that are all strong and fast, and a lot of them are dead a lot of them kill a lot of the members of the convoy. One big difference here, and I'm kind of looking back through my notes because I think I didn't take a note of it. I think it happened at the attack at the drive-in. So one major difference is in the film, LJ gets bit in the beginning and he doesn't tell anybody, and then he turns in the middle of the zombie attack and he bites Carlos, and then Carlos kills LJ, and this leads to Carlos's sacrifice later in the movie. In the script, Carlos's bit, I believe, I didn't take the note on it, which is stupid of me. I believe at the attack at the drive-in, and then it's not kept a secret. I don't think so. But so during the zombie attack, instead, Carlos bites Jill. So it's, we're losing two I guess it's still the same. We're losing two characters from Resident Evil Apocalypse, just two different characters. And Jill is a much more, she's one of the main characters in the film. It's Claire, but Claire, she makes it for as long as we know the whole thing, because she is in the 5th movie, but then just disappears. Or no, wait, she's in the 4th movie and then just disappears. Actually, I need to fact check if she is in the 6th movie. Since I'm on the Extinction page right now, I'm just going to click on Allie Larder. Yeah, okay, so she is in Resident Evil, the final chapter, which is the funniest movie I've ever seen. So, okay, so Claire comes back for that one. We do never see Chris again. Just doing a quick, Claire wakes Alice. Okay, so Claire survives the whole thing. So I need to rewatch the final chapter. It is the funniest movie I've ever seen. Just in the sense of, like, in terms of the whole franchise, I literally had to pause it because I was laughing so hard at one point. But I've seen all these other movies except 5 and 6 multiple times. 5 made me so mad I never wanted to see it again. But I am going to have to sit down and do a run through all of these movies again because it's been so long. I just remember Resident Evil Retribution making me so angry, and I have a script for it. I might cover it. I need to read through it because I believe it is a shooting script. I don't know how different it is from the movie. Also, I would have to rewatch that movie again, and as I said, I'm not really looking forward to that. All the similar things happen during the zombie attack. Umbrella tries to control Alice, and she breaks free of it. They get control back, and they're looking through her eyes as she's coming up on the rooftop where they're at. She kills the Umbrella scientist, and Isaacs gets away, but he gets bit by one of his super zombies, which of course is the guy in the zombie in the Raiders uniform, because it's the one he's been torturing the whole time. I believe it is the same in the movie, but all the super zombies look so non-distinct in the movie that it's impossible to tell. He flies back on the helicopter back to Umbrella, and they're able to follow him back to the base and find out where the Umbrella base is. And their plan is to use the helicopter to fly to Arcadia, because another change is the character that's played by. I should have written all this down when I started. So let me go back to my Resident Evil Extinction page. Ashanti, that's right. I knew there was some R&B singer in the movie. Ashanti, she dies in the film, but survives in the script because she flies the helicopter. I don't remember who flies it in the film, because it's only like a handful of people that escape to Arcadia, but the only one they ever seem to care about is Claire and Kmart, which Kmart is just such a dumb name. I would like everybody to agree with me on that one. It's like, oh, they named me where they found me. I didn't like my old name anyway, and my old life is dead, so whatever, just call me Kmart. That's dumb. I ain't buying it. So yeah, similar. The rest of the movie is pretty similar from here on out, except Carlos is obviously dead at this point. When the super zombie attack happens, Carlos gets killed, and once the whole situation's said and done, Alice comes back and is just like, "Where's Carlos?" And dun dun dun. So Jill's bit, she's doomed. So in the film, it's Carlos who drives the oil tanker through the gate and through the zombies, and then blows it up. So then the rest of the crew can drive in and steal the helicopter. In this film, it's Jill, and it's a little bummer to see Jill go out that way. But they give her the same moment with the cigarette where Carlos, he runs out of cigarettes in the beginning of the movie, throws them out, finds one hidden in the truck after it crashes. But he lights it and sits there and smokes on it before he blows up. In the film, Jill dies before she even gets it lit. Like, they never give her the satisfaction of getting that last cigarette, which I think is kind of a dick move. So yeah, they drive in, everybody hops on the helicopter, but Alice gives them the journal. She's going to stay. She's going to go try to take care of Isaacs and Umbrella down in the lab. So she goes down there, but a big difference is LJ stays, which is a super weird character moment for him. Like, he doesn't seem like somebody who would stay with her, and he's kind of seems like he's just like, whatever. Like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And that just seems like a little out of character for him. So yeah, they go down into the hive, and they meet the White Queen, and it's all kind of the same as it is in the movie, except it's playing it out together. So they go in the lab, they meet the White Queen. She's like, hey, we have everything here for you to make a cure, blah blah blah. But that element just gets completely ignored for the rest of the movie and leading into the next one. I don't remember if that makes it in the movie, in the third one. If, hey, we have everything down here to make a cure, or if that's something that, because that does happen in the final chapter, is like, that's where they cure the world in that movie. I don't remember. I believe it is mentioned, and then they just kind of like ignore it. Like, hey, instead of it curing the world, let's not do that, which makes zero sense. So yeah, they go down there. Isaacs has transformed into something, and he's murdered everybody down there. So it's all dark and dingy, and there's sparks going off from things out of the wall because he's killed everybody and mutated into something. And LJ kind of becomes the man in the chair. Like, he, the White Queen agrees to help them, but they have to clear out the infection first. So Alice has to go take out Isaacs, and LJ stays at the computer monitors. There's some joking bits where they look at he's like, oh yeah, Umbrella has profiles on all of us. And also they definitely make LJ seem like a computer expert, which is, he basically just seems like a pimp in Resident Evil Apocalypse. So I don't know what's going on with him and his character in this one. That's probably why they got rid of this idea. But yeah, so she goes down. She meets Isaacs. He is turned into the Tyrant from Resident Evil 1, which was something I did actually really enjoy in the Resident Evil Extinction movie. And, the fight pretty much happens as it happens in the movie. They battle each other with some telekinesis. They end up in the replica of the mansion, in the laboratory. They end up in the laser room, and it plays out exactly as it does in the movie, where the laser comes on, turns into the grid, and, destroys Isaacs, cutting him into cubes, and then stops right in front of Alice. But I don't even think I finished my sentence. Earlier, I was saying how he was looking up their profiles, and there's a little gag on LJ. It's like they all have a threat level, and his is at 0. So when he's the one who turns on the laser grid, and when it kills the tyrant, it's like, oh yeah, 0 my ass, bitch, and stuff like that. And Mike Epps is great, but even he probably couldn't have made this material work. And then, the end, it plays as it plays, except this time LJ and a dog are standing next to Alice in every scene, which is, they have the meeting at Umbrella, and they're like, hey, we haven't heard from the Nevada station in a while, so we just assume that Dr. Isaacs is dead. We'll transfer all of his research here and continue with the domestication, blah, blah, blah. And then Alice shows up on the screen and is like, hey, I'm coming for you guys, except instead of Wesker, it's Akamoto, and instead of Alice being alone, she's got LJ and her dog, who contributed nothing to the movie. And then, we have the zoom out with all of the clones, and boom, Resident Evil Extinction. It's over. As I said, I like the movie. The script is pretty close to the movie with some minor differences. The changing of Jill to Claire, obviously, aside from being necessary because the actress couldn't return from the movie, I legitimately think is better. Ali Larter was a nice addition to that movie, and I do think the cast of Extinction is pretty good. You got Lyndon Ashby in there, who was Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat, which I will be covering a Mortal Kombat script pretty soon. I am very excited for that one. That might actually be the first one I do after these Resident Evils. It's between one I was already reading before, which is a superhero script, or this Mortal Kombat script that this new reboot movie was. I believe it's the script they were using, but it's been heavily rewritten at this point. But yeah, the Resident Evil Extinction, the movie's fine. It's better than the other two because it is a little more graphic, a little more violent. The music is very good. One thing I'll say is the Resident Evil movies, and unfortunately the third one was the last one to do this, they all had very good licensed soundtracks, especially if you're a fan of like rock and metal music, which I am. And there's some good hip hop on there too. But the first 3 movies have amazing licensed soundtracks, especially the second one. That is one where the second one excels. The music is super great. But the score is also really good. All these movies have kind of this modern tech. I don't want to say techno, but like a tech sound to it, mixed in with like kind of the horror elements. It's like that shiny laboratory feel in music form. And I really enjoy them. The script, I can't remember which draft it is. I don't remember if it says first or second. It's an early draft, and you can see the elements there, and it's nice how they change. All the changes made sense. The compiling of some characters, the complete changing of fates of some characters, some characters changing by nature of recasting. It's just an example of how movies change. Like, clearly when he wrote the script, he felt that we're going to get, Sienna Guillory, however you say her name, we're going to get her back for Jill Valentine, and then, hey, sorry, can't do this one. And you can see how that affects a script and changes a script. You go watch that movie. The characters of Jill and Claire are pretty similar, but it is rewritten enough to feel like a different character. And they kind of both make sense. Like, Jill is a cop, so she would be kind of the bossy leader. And Claire in the games is the sister to a cop, even though Chris does appear in the next movie and is not quite the same character he is. But we'll get there on that one. But yeah, that's Resident Evil Extinction. It's interesting in the ways it's different, but the movie does turn out to be a better product. And I honestly can't wait for the next one, Resident Evil Afterlife. It is something special. So yeah, thank you for listening to this episode. I'm actually going to be recording Resident Evil Afterlife like in an hour. I'm doing both of these so I can have this one up on Monday and Resident Evil up on Halloween, and then I'm going to dig right into my next script, which is either the superhero one, or Mortal Kombat. Kind of sticking with the superhero video game stuff for a while. It's the stuff I really like to read. So as always, if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to check us out on Twitter, on Instagram at Shelved Podcast. I'm going to start doing some Twitter movie breakdowns, which I've already done some votes for some of those movies, which the first one's going to be Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. The second one is going to be Gone Girl, which are two of my favorite movies to talk about. So, literally just I'm probably going to just write them as drafts and save them and just dump them all at once. So it'll just be one long thread, because I'm probably going to sit there and watch the movie and type these out. I don't basically just want to live tweet a movie. I'm literally just going to dump a huge thread, and, it'll be up to you. If you want to see me break down a movie and its script and writing, that'll be a fun way to do it. I'm going to keep doing polls to decide what the next movies I'm going to break down are going to be, so be sure to follow those. Be sure to try to suggest some movies. I'm mostly kind of doing movies that I like to talk about, or ones that I think are interesting to talk about, whether they're either very good or very bad or a little controversial. So be sure to check that out on the Twitter at Shelved Podcast. You can email the show at shelvedpodcast@gmail.com. Whatever. If you got questions, I'll read them on the show. If you just want to ask me about some writing stuff, or tell me about some scripts, or send me some scripts, or whatever you want to do, that's where you can do that. You can also find us at Patreon. We've had a Patreon, no subscribers, but it's the best way if you want to support the show. The best way to help is help us cover our server costs, which is a monthly thing, and that would be appreciated. So you can check us out on patreon.com/ I want to say it's patreon.com/shelved, but it could be patreon.com/shelved podcast. And of course, I just threw my phone across the room, and I could have went on to our Twitter to check it, but it is my pinned tweet. So just, again, check out that Twitter, twitter.com/shelved podcast. Excuse me. And that's going to be it for today's episode. So, this episode's dropping today on Monday. Be sure to check back Halloween, where we're going to wrap up some Resident Evil. And I'm going to have a little bit of a bonus Resident Evil 1 movie outline at the beginning of that episode, just kind of wrap that up. Again, there could be one more Resident Evil movie covered. I'm gonna check out that Retribution script, but I think either way, I'm gonna take a break from Resident Evil. It was fun to do it in October, just all Resident Evil, all horror. But I'm gonna break that up. We're gonna do one more script, and if that Retribution one ends up being worth talking about, then I'll throw it in there as maybe a bonus episode in the middle of the week. But that's going to be it for today's episode. So be sure to check out all that stuff and check back on Halloween for Resident Evil Afterlife.